In some ways, it doesn't change too much of the approach. I actually use a lot of the same models that I was using back then in terms of like this idea of the whole school sustainability framework. So we still use this idea of that the work happens across your campus, across your curriculum, and across your community and culture. So for me, the work still holds this like very site level vision. But I think the part that has changed for me is trying to is really engaging with all different levels of stakeholders. I was doing that before, but now doing it at a different scale. So like the programs I was running at that school for students, we've just scaled them up to be countywide. And that's like a youth leadership program for youth to become youth climate ambassadors. I was also doing programs for teachers there where I took like a cohort of teachers who wanted to like spend a semester really figuring out, diving in how to change their curriculum, how to do environmental sustainability integration, how to do project-based learning with sustainability. And that model, like I feel so lucky, that was the first program that had already been started before I took the job at San Mateo County. So I've been able to like shift that program a bit and use the ideas that I was doing at the site level and now scale it to be not only for San Mateo County, but regional. So that's another example. And then I would say what I learned at O'Dowd was that administrators needed a lot of capacity building. And I had this experience. I had my first child actually, my second year there. And when I went on maternity leave, I remember all of them like texting me and calling me. And they were like, we need you here in the room to remember like that the planet is suffering. And so when I got back, we did some learning together about how they need to build their capacity to be able to share those things and make those decisions without me. So I was happy to have had that experience because it's taught me like, definitely we need to invest in administrators. So we've also, in our second year of the initiative in San Mateo County, we created a like administrative fellowship program as well to do that capacity building. And then I think the other learnings, so I think in some way it's been very similar, it's just at scale. I think the other thing though that is different has been working with community-based partners. I did a fair amount of community-based partner work there, but not in such a networked way that I'm doing here in the county to really like help them connect to each other and create a more robust ecosystem of services and programs for schools. So I'd say like the thing that I could point to that's a little bit different is just like in the need to go to scale, really building out systems and an ecosystem of support to really make sure that everybody is getting that equitable access to it. Before I only had to worry about every student on the campus getting equitable access. Now it's like how to make sure that all the little kingdoms and districts get their access to this stuff. The fundamental like job that county offices do is to be that kind of like middle manager between the state and the district, because the relationship and regulation is truly state to LEA to district. So we're here to support that process and kind of be an extension of the CDE. But at the same time, I think like to do these more leadership driven initiatives, so like to move away from just the kind of like the compliance stuff, I think what we can do is we can be a catalyst for change in a community. And county offices do that all the time with other things. I mean, yes, we do the standards and we do the LCAPs and we do all of that, but we also do like bold equity initiatives and bold visual and performing arts initiatives. And so this is just one more example of like how a county office can be that catalyst for change. I think what has helped us be successful is that we really put systems in place to reach every stakeholder and I mean, just putting this idea of like, we've got catch-all programs where they can come to us, but we also have customized services where we can come to them. So having that combination of things has allowed people to like buy into this leadership process and this change process. And I think it's really hard if a county office doesn't have the resources and time to do all that. I think it's not as easy for it to move ahead. You need buy-in from the top and you need buy-in from the bottom. So it's a grassroots and a top-down effort at the same time, right? I don't think you see success when it's just shoved from one side or the other. I think you need that moment in time where you've got both things happening. And that doesn't mean that like the grassroots should just sit and wait, right? It means that the grassroots needs to push until they can get somebody at the top who is like ready to join them and hold hands in the journey, right? So that happened to be what we had in 2015. And our county superintendent had at the time, Ann Campbell, she had the kind of wherewithal to know that they needed a champion to really move the work forward. So I'd say that's the second piece of it, is like you need a dedicated, compensated champion. This work is all too often like put as like, oh, just put on another hat. Like, oh, the hat of saving the world. Sure, I'll put that one on. Like, it's too much. Like, you need to be compensated, and you need to have, like, in my opinion, if it's a full-time job, right? So I think having like a leader who can understand that and put that in place is super critical. And then, like I was saying before, I think, and this is just like kind of reiterating it, having an idea of what is your framework. So we have like that framework of the 4 C's, the whole school sustainability integration, and then figuring out how to put programs and services together for all aspects of that. So we've got programs for every stakeholder that's along the bottom of it. So for students and teachers and administrators and community partners. And then we also have technical assistance services for facilities, for curriculum, and for community engagement and culture. So we've got something that is for the entire framework. And I think that that's really important. And then I think the last kind of 2 pieces of it is having a really compelling philosophy or vision that you're getting people to buy into. So in our county, we use the concept that comes from Zoe Weil and the Institute for Humane Education, that like the world becomes what we teach. And there's so many broken things in the world that we need to teach differently, and our schools need to be different. So we need to have this radical transformation process that's towards sustainability. So that's like our philosophy and our vision. And our strategic goals is to get every school to really have a sustainable and climate resilient plan that they can, they've assessed, they've got a plan, and they're implementing it. And so we feel like if you've got that vision and philosophy, and then you help people like put that plan in place, then they can really move this work forward. And then we're just here to support and build capacity so the momentum keeps growing. There's one other thing I would add to that, though, which was really important for us. And I think it speaks to this idea that this still is on some level very innovative work in education. Like, it's not innovative work really in the other sectors, like the governmental sector, the business sector. Like, the business case for sustainability like has left the station, right? Everybody gets it and they're all on board. It's still innovative, but it's not like cutting edge. But in education it is. And so people really need that philosophy is super critical in that vision, but they need to understand just the basics of like what we're talking about. So we early on have like dabbled in a number of different frameworks, and we have landed on topic and focus areas that we feel like really work for us. And a lot of that comes from like, we've pulled from like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the One Planet Living framework. And like, we just pulled from a bunch of frameworks, but just helping people understand like what we're talking about is energy, water, waste, food systems, and really making it simple for them to understand, oh, it's like the daily things that I do in my life. So I feel like that's just another really critical thing that a county office can do, is to just simplify and help people get that buy-in. So the idea of the whole school sustainability framework is the idea that like when you make this type of institutional change, it's going to touch everything. It's going to touch all parts of the school. I think a lot of times these initiatives get pigeonholed in either facilities, and it just becomes only facilities. And then you lose sight of like the campus as a laboratory for learning, or it gets pigeonholed in just science, right? Like, it's very rare for it to like emerge out of both of those worlds. And I think that's true. Like, you could talk to a lot of large urban school districts, like San Francisco Unified, for example, doing amazing work in their facilities. But to some extent, it's been pretty pigeonholed there, and it's been hard for them to make that leap. And Vanessa Carter, like, she's working so hard and she's doing an amazing job to make that transition for them, to help them get like, it's about curriculum too. And then you've got, on the other hand, you've got other initiatives that are just like so stuck in just like, it's about science and climate change. And that's it. And you're like, what about social studies and English and math and visual performing arts? So helping people understand that it's campus and curriculum, and that they should be learning like from their campus. and vice versa. Like if the campus can, like kids can do project-based learning and transform the campus. And then the other two pieces, community and culture. The idea of community and culture is that it's kind of robust, but it's the idea that you could step onto a campus and you could just feel that that place has a commitment to sustainability. So sometimes that is because of the facilities. You'll see like tri-bin stations, you'll see solar panels, rainwater barrels, but you'll see visible signs of it, and you'll see labels on those signs describing why it matters. You'll see a garden and you'll see people in the garden. You won't see like dead weeds, right? Like you'll see that kind of stuff happening. So you'll actually see the people walking the talk of sustainability. And then the other part of community engagement is that you'll see annual celebrations during Earth Week. You'll see, you know, kids allowed to do youth climate strikes. You'll see community-based partners being part of the larger picture, where kids go to field trips and community-based partners come into the school. So that's kind of why it's like these 4 C's. And on that website, it, like you can see, it says that I've adapted that from the Sustainable Schools Project in Plymouth University. Like there's tons of people using these like C's frameworks in education. And primarily I got this work from universities, like what the university system has been doing this work for, you know, well over a decade. And so I got that vision and that model largely from them, and just made it, simplified it for a K through 12 world. I would like the people to know that the programs that we've put in place, those capacity building programs, the youth one, the teacher one, the admin one, like that these are completely scalable, and that we've created them in a way that people should just take and do, right? They don't need to be owned. Like we're not doing it so that we can make a ton of money off of it. In fact, most of them, we pay people to come to our programs. But the idea, I guess, is that everything we're doing here is meant to be scalable. And I want people to take our work as a model and to take it and make it even better. So stand on our shoulders and keep on going. And I think the other thing that I would say, some initiatives I'd like people to know about, is the National Outdoor Learning Initiative. So during COVID-19, really using outdoor classrooms as a leverage point for getting your kids on campus and learning in a safe environment. And I think that will hopefully lead to more living schoolyards in schools, because that's a huge part of green campuses. And then the last initiative I think that I'd like people to know and start to wrap their heads around is what I was talking about before, which is climate resiliency. And I think that we are actively trying to start a conversation in K-12 education about what that means, and about how to do climate resiliency, not just in your facilities, but also with students. So our work in there has a lot to do with solutionary project-based learning, has a lot to do with trauma-informed practices with students as they look towards this very daunting doom and gloom future, and give them the tools to really come out of that. So think that was a lot of stuff, but my hope is that people just know that we're here as a resource and as a model, and we love more people to collaborate with us and to just keep on building on what we've started. I feel like I've been so lucky to have been able to stand on the shoulders of all these other people who've come before me, right? Like I know that I'm not the first one to do this work. And really, like I said, I'm just taking models and other things and adapting them for our local context. And I'm so fortunate to have so many different partners in California and across the country who are also innovating. And I'm so lucky to have learned from all these other people. Huge shout out to 10 Strands for just being an incredible backbone agency for the state of California. I think another huge shout out to Zoe Weil at the Institute for Humane Education for kind of giving me that philosophy, or putting words to like the vision that I had, but putting those words together for me. And then I think the United States Green Building Council and their Center for Green Schools, they've been a really great thought partner as well. And the Green Schools National Network, just kind of working with them to really help innovate in this movement. Okay, I just want to also thank my county superintendent. I mentioned the former county superintendent, Ann Campbell, who I love thanking and will always thank, but also our current county superintendent, Nancy McGee, for continuing this work and stepping forward as a leader and really driving it forward. So that's all.